FlyinGato squad? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Elias, and if you are new here and like daily car content, consider subscribing by hitting that button below. So as you can see behind me, the highly anticipated Honda Civic Si review is happening today. Now, of course, I have a Honda Civic Type R. I owned a Honda Civic Sport Hatch before the Civic Type R, and that was in manual, by the way. And now I finally get to drive the Honda Civic Si. Alright guys, so here we are, finally got my hands on a Civic Si, and all thanks, by the way, to Honda of Hackettstown. Really great dealership, and I'm really excited to be able to drive this car for you guys. It's a sedan, which is the one I would actually buy. I know the coupe looks a little bit better, but the sedan has just so much more capabilities in terms of having 2 extra doors that I would probably just get the DSi. Definitely, honestly, considering adding one of these as like a winter car, maybe replacing the BMW that we own with this one, since this one you could use in the snow, and the BMW you really can't. But really excited to be here, guys. Let's go for a little drive around the parking lot first, just to kind of get a feel for the car. Now, I'm leaving it in regular mode. This car does have a sport mode button, which we will use in a little bit, but for right now, feels pretty good. Initial impressions, feels very similar to my Sport Hatch, but feels a bit nicer than the Sport Hatch. So it's got the same exact steering wheel as the Sport Hatch used to have. It's got basically the same interior with a few bit more red accents here and there. But the seats, these front seats, I mean, I've been sitting here for a little bit just kind of getting everything ready, and I've already fallen in love with these seats. I have to admit, these seats are actually more comfortable than the Type R seats. I said it. It's unbelievable, but these are way more comfortable in terms of being able to daily drive it with this seat. So I can probably use this seat, go for a long distance drive, and it wouldn't be a big deal. However, there's a trade-off, because the Type R seat is going to perform a lot better when I'm out canyon carving or at the track. These seats, I can probably slide around a little bit. Oh, these bolsters are actually really good. Love the design, and I you know, the fabric of the seats, not really all the best. I definitely prefer the fabric in the Type R seats, but in terms of bolstering alone, I think the Si seats are probably the best seats that the Civic lineup has, if you're gonna daily drive the car. Now, if you're gonna be using it for track days, the Type R seats are, of course, the seats to have. And the Civic Sport Hatch seats, well, they're just bottom of the barrel seats. After driving the Si, after being in this Si, I feel like every seat should be like this from Honda. It's great. I love these seats. The driving position, basically relatively the same as the Type R's and the Sport Hatch's driving position. It's not much of a difference. It's actually, you know, pretty perfect what they did to it. It's quite a nice driving position that Honda has provided for us here. And Honda has always been really good at driver ergonomics, and this car is no exception. If you've driven a Civic Sport Hatch or even a Type R, everything falls into hand just exactly as everything else. It's got the same radio as the Civic Type R, which, you know, it works fine. It's not going to be the best radio ever, and it's not going to have all the crazy features that you're going to have in a Lexus or an Audi or anything like that, but it does its job relatively well. I've always loved this leather steering wheel. It's basically the same leather steering wheel as found in the Type R, except that it's not one of those flat bottomed, and doesn't have those red leather inserts. But other than that, it feels basically the same as the Type R. Now, that's just the steering wheel. I'm not talking about the steering feel. We'll talk about that when I get to drive this Si. Right now, we're just talking about the interior and the way it looks. So the way it looks, especially in this kind of a silver color that this car comes with, very understated. This is very stealthy in terms of a sporty car. You know, if I were to get one of these, I'd probably get it in the red. If I'm getting the sedan, or if I'm getting the coupe, I'd get it in the energy green. I love that energy green. If you haven't, go ahead and check out the energy green coupe LX that I drove. Very fun car to drive, even in an LX automatic form. The shifter. The shifter actually feels really good. It's not as good as the Type R shifter, but it is better than the Civic Sport Hatch by a smidge, probably because the shift knob is different. Now, the Civic Sport Hatch's shift knob is kind of a plasticky, very lightweight. This has more metal on it, and it's a little more heavier throw. But it's basically the same, or if not the same, then very, very similar throw to the Civic Sport Hatch that I used to own. It's not much of a difference there, to be honest with you. Needless to say, though, it's a really good shifter. I would be very, very happy to use this as a day-to-day car, even as a track day car. I mean, it's just easy to throw the shift around. A couple of other cool features that this car has that the Type R does not have is it's got the sunroof, which is pretty awesome to have, and it's got heated front seats. So not only are these seats really nicely bolstered and more comfortable than the Type R seats, they are also heated. That's incredible. So as we pull away here, of course, this has that backup camera right there. Pretty much every Honda these days has a backup camera. Pretty much standard. I'm so used to the way these Civics drive. I'm basically home right now. This is great. Great feeling. Couple of other notes. This does have automatic climate control, as you would expect to find it. Works perfectly well. It sounds pretty good. Oh, it's got a lot of rev hang though. That's unfortunate. So we're in normal mode right now. We're not in the sport mode. How does it drive? Definitely has a bit of a stiffer feeling than the Civic Sport Hatch, but obviously not quite as sporty as the Type R. Shifting is really nice and smooth. I like it a lot. Again, reminiscent more of the Civic Sport Hatch and not the Type R. It doesn't have quite the push that I was kind of expecting, but it's not slow. Love that lane watch assist. Little camera on that mirror over there. Pretty cool. How does this take this turn here? Oh, this chassis is incredible. I love this, the 10th Gen Civics chassis. I think they've done a really good job with it. Brakes are really good as well. Really good. So far, so good. Let's put it in sport mode and see what we've got. So in sport mode, you get the red dash, it becomes more red, and everything gets a little more firm in terms of the steering feel, the throttle feedback, and the suspension gets firmer as well. So that's actually really cool about this car. I did drive a 2013 Honda Civic Si. This is definitely faster than that. Let's see what we can do here on this straightaway. Oh, that rev hang is terrible. It gets out of its own way pretty quickly. Like I said, definitely faster than any previous generation SI. Shifter's very smooth, very good. Again, not quite as good as the Type R shifter. That shifter is very tight, but this will do. Pedals are basically the same as the Type R pedals and in the Civic Sport Hatch as well. Heel toe gets a little bit getting used to, but once you get used to it, it's not a big deal at all. I love that little lane watch assist. I wish the Type R came with that. In second gear, this thing's got quite the pull. Other things you notice in sport mode, the suspension is definitely firmer. I feel like this car is a perfect candidate for canyon carving or going through the back roads. It'd be pretty good for my Pennsylvania back roads for sure. The only thing is kind of lacking a little bit is in power for sure. Compared to the Civic Sport Hatch, I feel like this is a little bit more powerful, but honestly, I don't really notice the difference that much between the Civic Sport Hatch power and this power. There's definitely a little bit of a difference, but not by much. If I wanted something faster in a straight line, I would definitely go for the Type R. Definitely a big speed departure there. There's that lane watch. I just turned it on myself. It's a fun little car to drive around. It's not it's again, this would make an amazing daily driver. A better daily driver than the Civic Type R for sure. The only thing I wish is that it came with the hatch. The fact that this is missing the hatch is kind of a shame. You know, I would have probably gotten an SI if it weren't for the fact that the SI does not come in hatch form. But it is what it is, right? Taking some little bumps here. And even in sport mode, the bumps are very supple. You barely feel them. I guess it's because I'm used to the Type R's very stiff suspension. Let's take this right here rather quickly again. Oh, it's a lot of fun. You gotta remember, again, this has a very, very small turbo, and the ECU is there to kind of help it along in gas mileage and help it from destroying itself. Take this little back road here. Definitely a lot of fun. It's not slow, all right? It's not slow by any means. Definitely faster than any previous generation Civic Si. On this bumpy little road back here, let's put it back in normal mode so I stop bouncing around like crazy. You definitely feel the stiffer suspension, that's for sure. The brakes are actually really good. They are bigger brakes than the Civic Sport Hatch. Smaller brakes in the Type R. They're right in the middle. I think the rear brake discs are just a little bit too small for my taste. But I feel like the front is just good enough for track day purposes. One thing I want to note about the clutch, it's definitely a lighter feeling clutch than the Type R. It feels more like the Civic Sport Hatch clutch that I've had before. Very, very light, very kind of just on and off, very easy to do. I love the fact that you can press this button on this stalk right here, and you can use the lane watch camera whenever you want. That's actually really cool to have that. Just driving around normally here now. Feels very comfortable. I can't say enough good things about this seat. The fact that it comes heated, I mean, I'm almost sold with trading my seats in the Type R for these seats, just for the fact that they're heated and that they feel really good. If only the fabric were a little bit different, I'd be all over it. So the big question is now, which would I take? Type R versus Civic Si? Answer, Type R for sure. The power in the Type R is immense compared to this. Now on paper, yeah, it's only it's only 100 horsepower difference, but in reality, it's a world of difference. Like there's no real comparison between the power plants. The 1.5T is just kind of out of breath after about 6,000 RPMs. It doesn't feel too bad, but when you're used to the power plant that the Type R brings, it's just a different world. Just put it back in sport mode. Everything stiffens up a little bit. If it were me, I'd probably drive this car in sport mode everywhere I go. That rev hang is atrocious. Now the Type R does have a little bit of rev hang, but this rev hang is just as bad as the rev hang found in the Civic Sport Hatch. So to answer the question, Type R versus Si, I would go Type R. Now, the more interesting question, Civic Si versus Civic Sport Hatch in a manual. Now, besides the fact that it's kind of difficult to find a manual sport hatch, if you found one and you had a choice between the Civic Si and the Civic Sport Hatch, well, a couple of the things that this brings that the Sport Hatch doesn't is slightly more power. Yeah, it's a little bit more powerful. It's got these amazing seats. These seats are almost worth it by themselves. And then of course it has the limited slip differential. I didn't really get to test the limited slip differential. You don't really feel it unless you're spinning the tires out on the track or on the snow or in the rain. But the fact that this has a limited slip differential and the Civic Sport Hatch does not, another knock against the Sport Hatch. Alright guys, so I answered the question. Type R versus Si, I'd pick the Type R. Harder question. Civic Si versus Civic Sport Hatch with the manual. That's a tougher sell for me because the Sport Hatch has that nice big hatch in the back and this doesn't. But the fact, like I said, this has the limited slip differential. It's got those heated, beautiful front seats that are so comfortable. It's got a lot of space, even for being a sedan. It's got that big trunk in the back. It's got the back seats as well. It's got a little bit more accenting as well. Got the little red stitching everywhere as well. It's got a little bit more power. The engine is a little bit different than the Civic Sport hatch engine, even though they are the same 1.5T. It's got a slightly different turbo. So the Civic Si turbo has 9 impellers. The Civic Sport hatch turbo has 11 impellers, and what that does is for the Sport hatch, the power comes down low. For the Civic Si, the power comes on a little bit farther up, but it breathes a little bit better at higher RPMs. So that's why Honda did that. It's also got a few other upgrades in there and a few other different things as well compared to the regular 1.5T. Now the big thing for me is that limited slip differential. For me, if I had to do it over again, I would probably get the Civic Si over the Sport hatch, only because of that limited slip differential. I really wish Honda came out with a Civic Si in hatchback form. I think they're missing out by not doing that. They do have the Type R, which is why I got it, because it's the best hatchback that they have. But yeah, that pretty much answers it, guys. So as always, thanks for watching. If you haven't yet, please go ahead and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace out.